Hello everyone, I'm Dante, and on today's Anthem update, we're going to break down IGN's first look at the story space of Anthem, Fort Tarsis, what we learnt, and details that hint at other aspects of the game. This is by no means the first time we've seen within Fort Tarsis, but it's by far the most detailed visit we've had to date. I'm going to break down everything down into a few areas, starting with the layout and general information, then go into the NPCs that we meet, and ending with the vault. So when it comes to the general layout of Fort Tarsis, we've seen most of it before in the gameplay directly from Bioware, though it has been mostly limited. The version we got to see back then was just the bare bones view of Tarsis, the point when you just start, before you've met the people of Tarsis. This is where we're going to start today, as we can see Anthem starts out pretty bare. It's been slowly run down over the years due to the decline of the freelancers. As we meet new people, unlock their side missions, which we'll get to later, and progress the story, Fort Tarsis will grow with us, including the general aesthetic. As more people move in, your wing of Tarsis gets cleaned up, new options open along with story elements that blend into the world, hinting at new activities you'll be tackling later on, and mysteries to be solved. This includes opening up a whole new section of Anthem that's been teased but never seen in-game, although let's be honest, this is still no more than a teaser. But it's the best we've got. In this part of Tarsis, the key feature is the giant hall on the opposite end, flanked by two statues, that for some reason have been covered. My main theory with this location is that this is the Sentinel headquarters, and probably relatively early on in the story, due to the lack of people hanging around and that it seems like this construction will finish by the time we're done. This combined with the mission that opens at the time, locate Bryn's final missing Sentinel. Another key location here is the bar, which is teased as a place for lore, but I doubt that's all it's used for. Otherwise they wouldn't make it such a prominent feature. I think this might also be the place we see Halleck negotiating in one of the previous trailers. One of the nice features from this area is the radio we get to see, telling the story of the Crimson Lancer, which has many possible references, from the Red Baron to the Crimson Lance of Borderlands, the private military belonging to Atlas. Something I'm very interested to learn more about, as a common storytelling technique is to foreshadow future events using folk stories, or in the reverse, to tell an exaggerated version of your story from the outside. Perhaps we become a saviour of Tarsis, with an ever-evolving story. And finally for this section, I wanted to take a brief look at the very end of the video, with, as far as I'm aware, the first mostly complete map of Fort Tarsis. Though it doesn't show us anything we didn't already know, it does highlight what we'll be able to use it for. On the right we have the heart of the fort and the Owl Javelins, with the forge, vault and market, leading into the second area. Worth noting all the little speech bubbles dotted around. They are likely key NPCs that we can speak to, progressing story arcs, making character decisions, and in all likelihood, some surprises we know absolutely nothing about. Now that we've looked at the fort, we should look at the ones who populate it. We got to speak to Zoe again, who was the star of the previous livestream, apart from Owen being cheeky anyway. We already know who she is and that we can talk to her, but this conversation brings a lot of new names to light, primarily the name of two other locations. I've assumed for some time that Fort Tarsis likely isn't a major city, but rather somewhere that was a hub, perhaps a standing ground for the frontier, and that the main population likely exists in even bigger cities. This by no means confirms it, but shows that there are other settlements out there, and that travel between them isn't that uncommon as long as Striders and Lancers are there to protect them. The two places she mentions are Helios and Ancium. I've got no idea how large these places might be, but I have a feeling they could be a great way to expand the game post-launch, maybe even some targets for a social hub. The other key detail we learnt was of an event called Cataclysm. From how she spoke about it, this wasn't the only one, so I've got somewhat of a theory brewing. She mentioned that the sky turned yellow and that the ground moved from under them. What if this is an alternative to a Shaper Storm, and that there are actually several major events, each linked to different elements of some kind? The storm is just the most prominent or dangerous. Might be far-fetched, but I don't think they threw that kind of detail in there as a throwaway line. In addition to some known characters, we got to meet an all-new one, Commander Vole and Sentinel Bar. Vole seems to be the highest ranking member of the Sentinels we've met so far, and one of our major contacts within them for the story. Clearly skeptical of both us and the freelancers as an organisation, though he for now seems to be willing to let us grow, as long as we can unite the fractured factions of freelancers, primarily as it benefits him. We can go out further than the Sentinels, protecting the city, making their jobs all the more easier. Plus, I bet he'd rather risk our lives than those of his Sentinels. The other major NPC we met was Prospero, who we got to see briefly in the IGN free-play video. This now confirms his purpose as a vendor. Previously, I assumed he sold parts, ways to upgrade and craft. Well, I was half right. He is a cosmetic trader, while also being the person who teaches you how to craft at the forge. The mission he gives us is the tutorial to the crafting aspects of the game, and possibly unlocks the cosmetic side of the forge, at least more options for it. So I can see his contracts later on being focused on unlocking recipes, javelin parts and vinyls, besides the straight up buying them from him, which is one of the many activities we'll be doing, nicely leading me into a definitive answer to question about the dailies of Anthem. As part of the upgrades to our freelancer section, we have a table with 3 hourglasses, getting progressively larger to represent the length of their challenges, from daily, weekly and to monthly. We didn't get to see any of the rewards for these, but we did get to see an example of a weekly quest, dedicated to Fort Tarsis herself, to just kill 50 enemies from 3 factions and complete some world quests. One of the other features we got to see at the same table was the alliance system. Well, where it will be at least. From what I can make out of these texts here, it's pretty close to what I thought it might be. Essentially, rather than being a guild or clan, it's a way to encourage playing in groups and making new friends. Obviously, I have no details, but the fundamentals of this system are you get to add people to your alliance. Just by playing, people contribute to the alliance. The more they play, the more benefits they get. Still no idea of any of the specifics, but we can at least shut down the alliance as a guild debate in a more official capacity. Now finally, onto a system we've known that has been there for a long time, but we've never had a chance to see its UI or what it entirely entails. Primarily, it's our storage, where we store all our unused gear, abilities, consumables, and crafting materials, with a capacity of 300, just as we've been led to believe. As a first impression, it's well organised, clear in its breakdowns, and serves the purpose of an inventory, just with a little bit more information. We got to see the full breakdown of all weapon types, which we'll be learning much more about in this week's livestream. Without just reading off all the headers, the other notable information we got from this was related to the crafting materials, of which there seems to be many, but also the descriptions. The lore is nice for sure, but the last line tells you where and how you can best acquire the resource. Assuming this applies for all of them, this is a nice step to keep us in-game for information, not digging through a wiki for how to farm what we need. Though this was only a brief look, we had a lot to delve into about Fort Tarsis, and we're now only just scratching the surface. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Fort Tarsis, and what ideas you have about the mechanics, such as the alliance system, and what this will be, and has this improved your opinion on the story hub? Perhaps even Anthem as a whole. Let me know in the comment section below. That's it for today's update. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, provide your thoughts and feedback about anything I've covered, or this format below. You can support the channel by subscribing and using the bell to be notified of future content as it goes live. And until next time, I've been Dante, thanks for watching.